Hey, welcome back to the John Fredericks Show. I'm your guest host, Senator Bryce Reeves, and on the phone with us today is a very close and dear friend, former senator, majority leader in the Indiana State Senate, who now finds himself in the swamp of Washington, D.C., and Brandt Hershman. Senator Hershman, welcome to the program this morning. It's great to have you on.
Hey, good morning, Bryce. It's great to be with you as well. You're a fantastic senator and a great friend, and it's a privilege to be on with you this morning.
Well, listen, one of the reasons most people don't know, they might probably know your better half a little more because she had to go through the rigorous process of being appointed. But your wife, Lisa, she is the Chief Management Officer of the Department of Defense, which is pretty much the number 3 job in DOD, first woman, highest level ever, and she's trying to get the military budget straight. You know, and a couple segments ago, I had on Congressman Rob Whitman, who is a stalwart supporter of our nation's military and those who've worn the cloth. And but you know, your wife is a stickler on the finances, and she's going to try to get DOD straight. She's done a phenomenal job, and I'd love for you to talk a little bit. I want to talk about your career, what you're doing now. I know you're an expert in tax policy and some of those things, and trying to help the administration in support of where your wife is working. You're a seasoned litigator, and you know, some people don't know. One of the facts probably that people don't know about you, but I know about you, is that you once served in for a former U.S. Congressman, Steve Byer of Indiana, and that kind of lit your fire. But you guys were the power couple in Indiana. I still think you are, and you know, who knows where you go next. There's still some talk out there that you might go in higher office back to Indiana. But let's talk a little bit about what Lisa's doing and your role in that, and what you see our nation's military footprint changing, and how she adjusts the budget to the mission of the military.
Well, I appreciate that, Bryce. I'll tell you, it's very kind of you to say all those nice things, because I've been kind of trapped in the house here since late March, and I got a 14-year-old Rottweiler with arthritis staring at me, and I think he'd just as soon get me out of the house for a while. So I appreciate the kind words. Yeah, it's quite a juxtaposition. I served as a writer for President George H.W. Bush as a young guy, and the guy who really set my fire for politics was Ronald Reagan. Saw him speak at Purdue back in the 1980s, and he had me at hello. You know, somebody who really understood what people were facing and served as a voice for them. And so I got involved in politics as coming off a farm. I was a farm kid and no experience, no political family whatsoever, but I wanted to try and make a difference. And as you know, one of the great ways to do that is serving in state elected office, where you really can have hands-on with policy. Mm-hmm. And I had the privilege of serving for 18 years, including with folks like Mitch Daniels, who a lot of folks know, president of Purdue now, but also Mike Pence. And what a great leader he was for the state of Indiana and for our nation as well. But I've never believed much in term limits. I just believe in self-discipline. And so after 18 years, I thought it was time for somebody else to have an opportunity, and I stepped down into the private sector. And my wife, she's blindingly logical, which she's an engineer, industrial and mechanical engineer. She has watched my political career from afar, but has always been tremendously supportive, but is not, and is conservative, but has not been involved in the political world. Right. But she wanted to serve her country. Her dad served in the Navy in World War II, and this was her opportunity to do something like that. And so she would.
That's probably her calling you to tell you better be careful, buddy. I'm telling you.
What? Well, she reached out, and next thing you know, she was interviewing with Jim Mattis's folks.
See, she knows. She's listening to me right now on the radio.
I apologize for that. She calls me, or she reaches out to the Department of Defense, and the next thing you know, she's nominated by the president. And this is something you don't hear in the media today. You know, they like to tell a story. President Trump is anti-woman, or President Trump is anti-minority, or whatever. Here's the truth of the matter. Lisa Hershman is the highest-ranking woman ever nominated and confirmed by the U.S. Senate into the Department of Defense. And her role is to help clean out the swamp and help save money The Department of Defense spends $750 billion a year, and frankly, they could be spending it better. They're like any other large bureaucracy that accumulates over time, and she has spent the last couple of years digging into those things, and people haven't heard about those success stories, but I'll just give you a brief snapshot into it. As she started digging into some of the ways that money was spent over there, and it's not bad people, it's just bureaucracy. They had 31 different contracts for buying orange juice from only 2 vendors at different price points.
Right.
There was a battery that is commonly used that they stock and not purchased by just one agency, but purchased by a bunch of them. And when she drew down the data, and she's a data nerd, she will admit it, but the DOD was paying everything from, on the low end, 13 cents for that battery, and on the high end, some agencies were paying $25 for the same battery.
That's like the hammer from way back when we were youngsters.
That's right.
That was 200-something bucks, right?
That's right. And even though those are small things, when she accumulated all of them, story after story after story, in 2 years' time, a little less than 2 years' time, actually, the current number that she's released is that they have validated reform savings of $22 billion.
Isn't that something?
It's 3 times, and you know, billion, that's such a big number, we don't, it's hard to put your arms around that, but to give you an idea, that's 3 times the amount that was saved by all of the predecessor positions over a decade. And it shows you how reform efforts are really catching fire in DOD, and it's vital. Not only are we facing the threat of an emerging China, and Russia continues to be a threat, we have to make sure our warfighters are appropriately equipped with the latest and greatest in order to prevail in conflict, and also for their own safety. And the amount of money we have is not limitless, and it's certainly being challenged right now by an economy that's struggling from COVID. So the better way to free up money is not to ask for more tax money, but to spend what you have smarter.
No, I agree. I'll tell you, I was telling Delegate Freitas, as you know, he's our congressional nominee, this morning that I was at a change of command ceremony at Fort Belvoir yesterday. And Fort Belvoir is a unique post in our nation's military because of I guess, over 170 some odd different entities utilize that post and operate out of that. And the garrison commander there never thought he'd be in a garrison commander and have to be like a mini mayor and deal with the issues that he had to deal with COVID and schooling and, you know, all the issues that he has to deal with as kind of a small town of 200 and some odd thousand soldiers, sailors, and airmen. And General Jones spoke a little bit about that, he's the commander of the National Capital Region, which includes AP Hill as well, Myers-Henderson Hall, where the old guard is, and those sort of things. But what I found unique was what Lisa has done with the $50 billion. You see these guys and gals that are in charge of our nation's military, and they understand that as well. But I think you're right. If the more bureaucracy she cleans out, the more we have to spend on Virginia-class subs, as Rob was talking about, and modernizing our Navy. You know, for so long the Navy didn't do a whole lot because the Army was fighting the ground wars, right? And we put a little money into the Air Force, but you know, we've got to get back to rebuilding a strong Navy. And as Rob talked about, Congressman Minton talked about, those, you know, Virginia-class subs are so important to the strategic and operational tactical ability of the United States to respond anywhere in the world at a moment's notice. And the threats have not lessened. Maybe they've quieted a bit because everybody's focused on COVID, but you and I know there's still hotspots around the world that we're sending our troops to. And I can't thank you enough. I mean, you know, Elisa, I've gotten notes through you and had dinner and some of those things. And, you know, you definitely married up, brother. I got to tell you, you know, you married right, you married up, and you're doing exactly what you should be doing. And I want to thank you for doing that as well. But listen, let's talk a little bit about politics. You know, you're in office. Where do you see the groundwork going? How do you think shaking out with regard to, you know, where the president is and how he has to fight and, you know, Joe Biden's pick?
Thanks. It's a very interesting time. You and I, both the state legislators, we had the benefit of serving where in a capacity in which you've got 49 other laboratories of innovation, the other 49 states. So you can learn from their mistakes and successes. And I made a career out of pointing out Illinois' mistakes. Just the fiscal mismanagement and where they are,
And their
but
football
also
teams?
celebrate the victories of conservative-led states. And unfortunately, the federal government doesn't have any competition, and so there's so much of an emotionally driven argument about everything that isn't informed by fact. And I suppose right now you look at where the public is on this stuff, it's not surprising that emotion drives a lot of these issues. I drove by Dairy Queen the other day, and emotionally I wanted that peanut butter parfait, and I looked down at my waistline and factually determined that wasn't a good idea, but it was not it's not an easy thing to do. And so now when so many things are uncertain, particularly due to COVID, a lot of people fall back into ways of thinking that are emotionally driven rather than factually informed. And actually, this morning I got up, and you all can do this. We can participate in a group exercise. Go to your computer, go to your search engine of choice, and type in Kamala Harris accomplishments.
Right.
And you'll hear about an electrifying stage presence and, the groundbreaking diversity that she brings and those kind of things. So, I think she's a fine person. I've met her and talked to her, and she's a very pleasant person. But with the state that our country's in at this point, facts matter more than an electrifying stage presence. And when I contrast her to my friend Mike Pence, who's Christian, a conservative, a Republican, a great father and husband, who's led by example. And I serve by his side when we cut taxes for small businesses and individuals. As a result, Indiana built one of the strongest economies in the nation. That's a policy informed by factual experience. And I think those are the kind of things that hopefully we can focus on a little bit, but it's very hard right now because of all the deep uncertainty over where we're headed over this pandemic. And I am hopeful that people will look at some of the things that have been accomplished. I will say, even in my wife's case, she came home not long ago and said to me,
you actually got to see her?
I did a regulatory review, and I said, of DOD regulations? She said, yeah. I said, what'd you find? She said, well, we looked at 716 of them, and we're repealing 247.
Wow.
Those are things you don't hear about. Rather, it's so much of this kind of emotional argument right now, and I hope we get to a presidential debate series that actually causes people to think about policies and how it's going to affect their lives and their businesses and their jobs and that kind of thing. But I don't think we're quite there right now.
Well, I definitely appreciate your insight. I think your point on, and David Avella in an earlier segment had kind of alluded to some of that. Speaking of Lisa going through her process through the Senate, I know there are a lot of unfilled billets in the Department of Defense that are, political civilian appointees. What's the holdup? Why are we having a lag time on getting these people through? The president's almost done with his turn. And, like typical DOD on a lot of these issues or a lot of these things, folks just kind of rotate in and out of that building. But what do you think the holdup is there with the Senate and getting confirmations done?
Well, strap yourself in because I know this is going to shock you. There's some politics involved. And the truth of the matter is that you've got a lot of people who've been sitting nominated but can't get a Senate vote for a very, very long period of time. And the reason is because the Democrats in the Senate don't like a lot of the Republican judicial nominees that are out there. And so they have tried to slow roll those nominees rather than just giving them a vote. They were at one point forcing 30 hours of debate on every single nominee. There's only limited time to deal with all the issues that are out there. And so Mitch McConnell has decided to prioritize those judicial appointments over some of the other nominations. As you're late in a term like this, it's just a time management issue. And so it's the holdup is the U.S. Senate, and that now I will say, and in fairness, that there have been a number of non-controversial nominees who've been let through in various positions, but that has been oftentimes more the exception than the rule, and so it has been very hard to move people along.
Well, if you look at where Obama was at this time of his presidency, I think he had probably way over 90% of all his positions and appointments filled. And you look at the administration, and you're definitely right about them slow rolling. And, you and I serve in the Senate, and we know how critical federal judges are to the process now with regard to litigation on you know, bills that are being passed and how they work. And we're seeing more and more cases going through the federal courts up to the appellate court up to the Supreme Court. And it's so critical because at least in Virginia we had done redistricting, which is coming up now after census. But when we had it last time 10 years ago when I came on, Democrats owned the Senate and Republicans held the House. And you don't hear any complaining or lawsuits from the Democrats about the Senate districts, even though I represent a Democrat district myself. But yet, everything had to be cleared through the Obama Holder Justice Administration. They were cleared by them, and then the next thing you know, we're getting sued by them through the Fourth Circuit. And they had a judge come from California and redraw our districts. And lo and behold, the Speaker of the House now went from a relatively safe Republican seat to a pretty safe Democrat seat, and we lost one of the delegates that was in charge of appropriations. So we're now completely Democrat. We did pass in a bipartisan fashion a redistricting committee type bill that got through that'll be on the referendum this November in this election. But we know now that Soros and some of his groups are coming down, and the Democrats are trying to defeat that so they can permanently write the maps in their favor. So, I don't fault them for wanting to get federal judges in. And you're an attorney, you know how this all works. So we've got to fill those slots, and those really do come first. But it's hard to operate at the level that the DoD does without the civilian direct oversight. And I can't thank you enough for your work in trying to get folks in there. I know you and I have talked about several folks and all that sort of stuff. But so where do you see this going? Like, do you think the president's got a shot? Do you think COVID's going to do it? What are the factors now that it's sized up? I'm curious to see your thoughts on where you think this is going to stand. Are we going to be able to take back the House? Where do we go?
I think it is not surprising, but deeply disappointing that the media has tried everything they can to criticize the president for everything in the world. The COVID response is the one that disturbs me the most. This is unprecedented. We're all learning every day. The studies on many of these issues are contradictory, and our knowledge is evolving. At one point they were saying Governor Cuomo was just the greatest governor in the country because of his COVID response. And the next thing you know, they've got one of the worst outbreaks in the country. So to blame anybody, to point fingers and say, hey, somebody has done this right or wrong, I think is unfair. And yet, because of people's uncertainty over where we're headed, they're desperately trying to hold the president responsible for that. And I just don't think that's fair. There's reasons you can love him. There's reasons you can disagree with him. But I don't think COVID response is one of them. However, it is going to drive a lot of the debate coming into the fall. And I am very much looking forward to the debates because, simple fact, Joe Biden has been in D.C. for almost 50 years. Anything that he wanted to accomplish or wanted to advocate for, he's had 5 decades to do it.
Right.
So if you can go out to the street right now and offer a $20 bill to anybody, the first person you meet, to tell you what Joe Biden stands for, what he's going to do as president, I think you'll walk away with your $20 still in your hand. And people need to know what the differences are going to be, whether their taxes and regulations are going to be increased, how it's going to affect their job. And I think the president and the vice president will equip themselves very well once those hard facts are laid out to the American people. So I still think that this is very much up in the air, but I'm looking forward to a policy-driven debate through the debate process to show who these folks really are.
Well, I couldn't agree more. When you look at, especially the vice president, someone who has served in Congress, he was the governor of Indiana. You and I both know him personally. We know his wife, she's involved in so much with regard to our veterans and military families, and he knows the policies because he served at the executive level. He served in the legislature. He knows how to get those things done. And I think, he doesn't get a lot of praise. But if you want a guy that can debate you on an issue, it's going to be Mike Pence because he's just phenomenal, And I think I am looking forward to the vice president's debate more than I'm looking forward to the presidential debates, just because I think you'll see a real contrast in leadership and someone who's actually had to make the hard decisions. I know Kamala Harris has been an attorney general, but that's a little bit different than being a governor. And as a governor, you can't. It's you got to take everything into consideration. But well, listen.
You're a CEO. Yeah. You're running a multi-billion-dollar in business day to day. And I think for a lot of folks who've served in a legislative capacity, that can be quite a shock to the system. You're not just making decisions on laws, but you're making day-to-day operational decisions, and there's a learning curve involved.
Sure. Well, listen, we got about 30 seconds left. Anything you want to follow up with?
Just to thank everybody for paying attention to looking out on the issues and thinking thoughtfully and trying to talk to your neighbors, whether it's on social media or not, and keep your calm, keep the emotion out of the debate. And if you have a factually informed, polite discussion with your friends and colleagues, we're going to help spread the word as to why conservative principles are the ones that are destined to lead this nation to continued success. And I certainly appreciate all you do, Senator. Thanks for having me.
Well, likewise, Senator, and please give my best to your beautiful wife.